Okay, hello everybody. Good afternoon and welcome. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Give me a thumbs up. Thank you very much, Norman. Great. Thank you, Vanessa. Thank you. Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome to this session this afternoon. I'm glad to see that we've got some familiar faces here. I'm happy. Who do I recognize? I recognize Vanessa from last time. Bushra is here. I do recognize some names, which is wonderful. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. So I'm not going to give a very long introduction today. I'm just going to remind everybody a couple of ground rules for today's session. Please keep yourselves muted because it just means that we don't have any interruptions or any noise pollution coming from anywhere else. If you need captions, if you need subtitles, what you can do is go to the bottom of your screen, click on More. This will open a little menu. And on the side there, you will have, I think for you guys, it says transcript. Mine is in French and I've got the word transcript. So you'll have an option where the text will appear on the side of the screen. So if you need that option, it's available to you in the More button at the bottom of your screen. So, without further ado, I'm very, very excited about today's talk because it promises to be extremely interesting and something a little bit different from the talks that we've had here at EBU. So I'm really, really pleased. It's a little bit of a departure from our usual very sort of business skills orientated presentation. So I'm really looking forward to this today. Ladies and gentlemen who are present, I'm going to introduce you to our special guest, who is Norman Leach. He's joining us today. Norman shared with me his sort of CV and so on because he said it's important that you know how I got to where I am, and they sent me like a 20-page document, guys. This is an extremely experienced and worldly wise presenter that we're pleased and excited to have with us today. So very, very briefly, he's got more than 20 years in the classroom. He's also been working as an advisor to different organizations. He's worked in governance, in financial planning and financial management. He's won awards he's won countless awards. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share his LinkedIn with you all at the end of today's session, because I would be really, really pleased if you could all go and take a look at his work. He's fluent in about 5 languages as well, which is wonderful. He's had some various roles in ministries, working in the Ministry of Agriculture, working in the Ministry of Health. So he's hugely, hugely experienced, and we're very, very lucky to be in his presence today. So, Norma, I don't want to say anymore. I'm going to let you do this, but we're really, really pleased that you're here. Thank you so much for accepting this invitation and for taking the time to join us. Because also, everyone, Norman's joining us from Western Canada, so I don't think he's even had breakfast yet. So it's a very early start. So thank you so much for that. I'm going to
No,
hand it
no.
over to you.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you. Everybody can hear me? Can you hear me, Louise? And
Perfect.
everything's good? All right, good. Well, good morning, everybody. Well, at least in my world, it's good morning. Louise is not wrong, except I am halfway through my first cup of coffee. So got a bit of a start as I was waiting and we're going. Yeah, that CV is not meant to be shared in its entirety. It's to pick and choose what you want out of it. The my grandfather was a Ukrainian immigrant. In fact, he immigrated to Canada inside his mom because he was born 3 months after they landed in Canada. So he's actually a Canadian, being born on Canadian soil. And so we had 3 generations now on that side of the family that are 4, I guess, now, because I've got daughters that are there. But his argument was always get as much experience as you can, get as much education as you can. It's the only 2 things the government cannot take from you. And I thought, that's a great way to live your life. So I probably took it to some extreme as we went. So Louise, what's our final count? I just want to see how I structure this. What's our final count?
We're at 26 participants, but we're climbing, so people are
Okay.
still coming in. Yeah.
I'll get nervous if we peak and then drop off during the presentation. That will make me
I'm
concerned. Don't
I'm
tell
not
me.
sure that's going to happen.
Don't tell
But
me.
we're doing okay.
So
And
I'm gonna
Helen is
finish
coming.
it.
Helen is coming in to join us, but she's going to be a few minutes late. Ladies and
Okay.
gentlemen who are our students, Helen Chalisa, who is the chairperson of the board of directors, is coming to join us, but she's running a little bit late, and she sends her apologies. She'll be with us very soon.
Yeah, so Helen belongs to my Rotary Club, and I certainly want to thank her for suggesting me to come and speak to you today. So it's all because of her, and I thank her, and I thank Louise for putting up with because I was on the road. I was in Paris last week. I was a little concerned. I was getting all the emails, etc. So I'm sure Louise was going, "Oh goodness, not another call from him, not another email from him." So today I want to talk about, as we said, I'm a marketer by training. So if you want to, I can flip this over, Louise, and we can talk marketing all morning, but that's not really what I would like to talk about. I think the world is changing around us and we're in a unique spot to be in. It's only happened 2 or 3 times before that we're in this unique spot. And so it is my contention that approximately every 100 years, we go through a change in the world. It just changes around us. And usually it has been around what we call general purpose technologies. Now, general purpose technologies are not inventions. Inventions are when we design something to solve a particular problem. So I have wet hair. I need a hair dryer. I invent the hair dryer. It does one job. It does one thing, and it is useful. Now, there may be 1,000 variants. There may be 1,000 different price points, but it's a hair dryer. It does what it's supposed to do. In a general purpose technology, my contention today, it drives new businesses, new jobs, and new ways of living. So let's look at these. First is the Industrial Revolution. About 200 years ago, took production from the handmade product to factory-made product. About 110 years ago or so, Henry Ford discovers or builds out the mass-produced automobile. Now, before anybody panics, yes, the automobile was a European invention. It was designed in Germany, but it was a toy. It was made for the very rich to have something else, in that case, in the stables next to the carriages and the horses and everything else. And in fact, cars at one point cost about $6,000 in the North American context to buy. In 1910, they would have cost about $6,000, which is 5 years of a working man's salary. So it was 5 years to buy an automobile. So you had to be very rich. Henry Ford introduces mass production, and within 20 years, the price of a car drops to $375. So from 6,000 to 375. And so it was a fundamental change in how people saw the automobile. And I'm arguing we're watching in real time the same thing happen with artificial intelligence. It is happening with us, and we can watch it. We all studied the Industrial Revolution. We've all studied the automobile. We get to watch this one. We get to see how it evolves and how it stretches. So before the Industrial Revolution, let's take a look at that. Before the Industrial Revolution, there were craftsmen who built things. You had a barrel maker, you had a leather manufacturer, you had a blacksmith. They made things typically one-offs, typically two in order. Somebody called them and said, I need a new set of armor. They went and negotiated a price. They built the set of armor. It was handed off. Great, great process. But in the late 1700s, early 1800s, we moved to factories. Now, what was one of the challenges with the cottage industry is if you couldn't afford a new plow, if you couldn't afford a new shirt, you had to make it yourself, which meant it probably wasn't as good a quality as the seamstress would have made, but it survived. You could wear it. And so we went from this idea of craftsmen to factories, and it changed everything. We went from mass migration, so people didn't need to live on the farm anymore. You didn't need to have 8 or 10 children to continue the family business, to help you in the family business. So the birth rates could drop. People could afford a better life because now you're feeding 5 kids, not 10. You're having a better lifestyle as we go along. And the whole new model came along, but there was a pushback. Let's put it that way. There was a pushback. One of my favorites, because they introduced the train. So if you were born in 1800 in a village, your village is what you saw. You might have traveled 5 or 6 kilometers out of the village to the local whatever, but you were there. So you're going to marry somebody from that village. You were going to marry somebody that you grew up with because you weren't going to move. We introduced the trains. And I love the fact that when train was invented and put on tracks, governments trying to control this evil new technology put in rules that said trains could not go faster than 30 miles an hour, so about 40 kilometers an hour. Could not go, that was the limit. And the reason was a professor, who will go nameless today, a professor came up with a theory that if you went over 30 miles an hour, over 40 kilometers an hour in a train, the wind blowing by you would be so strong, it would suck the air out of your lungs and you would suffocate to death on the train. This is an actual professor at a university, well respected, saying trains are going to kill us. We have to stay away from them. Going back to the cottage industry, we want that cottage industry. But it changed everything. We had now modern management was born. We had economies of scale, which to a business institute, I probably don't have to explain, but economies of scale meant we were now a factory could make 1,000 shirts faster and at least of equal quality to 1,000 seamstresses making that same shirt. We could make 1,000 less people. It allowed people to move to cities. China came to the game late. They became industrialized late. And theirs is the largest single land migration of people ever. 300 million people moved from farms to the cities to take government, not government, it was sort of government in China, but to take factory jobs. 300 million people. But the same thing happened across Europe. The same thing happened across North America, as people were no longer having to live on that tiny little farm or that tiny little village, but you could move and sell your products somewhere else. And the whole idea of capitalism arrives because now to build those factories, we have to have financing. So we have to have a banking system that works. We have to be able to build on large scale. We have to do things that we had never done before. And yet no one today argues, and I can see Louise on the screen. Louisa, are you all up for making your own automobile in the backyard? Because if we went back to that craft kind of idea, you'd be on your own building your own car. Are you comfortable with that?
No, thank you. No.
No, thank you. Exactly. So no one argues that we should go back, but we do argue that this was something that happened that we needed to do. The steam engine changed everything. And so because the steam engine came along, the new value that we put on was coal. Coal fired those steam engines, and everything was calculated in the value of coal. In Canada, we did not flip to a new valuation that is oil until 1948. If you opened your financial newspapers, the headline would have been the price of coal today is X, not the price of oil, which we expect today. So we changed even the fundamental measurement of business with the Industrial Revolution. Fair enough. I know we're not answering questions, but if you have any, hang on today. I'm glad to address these things at the end. So as we built, though, we added on a whole new set of structures and a whole new set of restrictions. So in 1894, the Times of London published a report that said no city could be over 1 million people. No city could be over 1 million people. And their calculation was that the amount of horses, the 100,000 horses that would be necessary to serve that city of 1 million people, they would produce enough manure, about 2.5 million pounds or about 1 million kilos of manure every single day. And the cleanup crews couldn't keep it up. They couldn't continue the job. They would get, essentially, cities would bury themselves in horse manure. They would just be buried. In 1898, the world's first international urban planning conference convened in New York City to try to solve this unique problem. What were we going to do with a growing population against horses that were necessary and producing manure in fast enough? The world's best minds did what the best minds often do. They threw up their hands and said, there's nothing to be done. We're just going to have to stop growing cities at 1 million people. There's no solution. At the same time, a guy in the United States was looking at those toys that were built in Europe and said, there's got to be a better way to build the automobile. There's got to be a better way. So Henry Ford comes along and does not, in any way, shape, or form, claim to have invented the automobile. They existed well before he did. But he mass produced them. So we had another one of these technologies that changes everything. And Henry Ford is famous for saying, if I had asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses, because that was the glasses, that was the lenses they were looking through, is horses. So how do I get from place A to place B faster? I get a horse. I get a fast horse. I pay more for a fast horse. Henry Ford said there had to be another way. So he invented the modern assembly line around the automobile, guaranteed. But the fact that he was building automobiles is absolutely the smallest part of the story, because it would change everything. Prior to the automobile in mass production, oil was taken from the ground. I think Standard Oil Company started in 1900. And their only I shouldn't quite say only purpose, but almost the only purpose was to change whale oil in lamps to kerosene oil. So the vast amount of oil byproducts were thrown away because there was no use for them. So we had kerosene lamps. We weren't killing whales, which was harder and harder to do. And kerosene burns much cleaner than whale oil. So ladies were happy that their houses weren't covered in soot from the whale oil. That was it. When the automobile came along, Henry Ford said, I need a propellant to start this vehicle, to move this down the road. I need a propellant. And that was going to be the oil that we now know comes out of the ground. In fact, where I live, we are the third largest oil producer in the world. Our economy, the house I live in, is funded on the benefits of having oil where we are. And I was just at a conference that was talking about conflict, and they said that the first in a war is the winner is not going to have better material. They're going to have more oil. That is who's going to win the next war. So that's how much we have depended on this. We built steel plants. There was no real need for steel other than what the blacksmith hammered in his blacksmith shop. But now we needed steel in mass quantities, and Henry Ford needed it and set up steel factories. By the way, Ford at the time was completely integrated. They owned their own steel mills. They owned their own coal mines. They owned their own rubber plantations. They were completely self-structured. That part of the cottage industry and the Industrial Revolution bled over into what he was doing. One company does everything, but we come up with a car at $375. So rubber industry came, roads. We were limited during the Industrial Revolution to what your horse could go on and where the train went. So we didn't need side roads. We didn't need to go off in village. If your village wasn't on the railroad line, it was pretty much a death knell. People clustered around the rail lines. It's why Canada, 80% of our population lives within 300 kilometers of the US border, because the first cross-country railroad went that path. So everybody clustered around the railroad. Roads allowed us to do things, and industries we never had, asphalt industries, all of these as well. Insurance, when you started to drive cars, people got hurt. The cars got damaged. You wanted to replace them. The insurance industry was born. There was no insurance industry prior to well, okay, look, there was. When I make these sweeping statements, somewhere there was a guy with one of those green eye shades and a rubber armband calculating insurance and selling to his 5 best friends, because that's about what the industry was. It grew just super fast under the need for the automobile to be insured. Finance had to become, most people, Henry Ford's vision was we should be able, a worker in his factory should be able to buy his product. And that $375 car was that point. But even then, most people, we'll see in a moment, most people could not buy a car straight out. You didn't have $375 in your pocket in 1920. So they had to invest in a finance companies that would help us finance these, which also meant now, back to Louisa not making her car. Now, Louisa, you could buy a ready-made home and pay for it over 25 years rather than having to live with your parents until, as most females did, they got married and then moved to their husband's house, right? There was no opportunity for them as a couple to build their dream home. Here, after Henry Ford, there certainly was. Tourism changed dramatically. Okay, I know that is somewhat of a contentious issue right now, particularly people trying to go to Dubrovnik and other places in Europe and crowding the streets and all the rest. But we would not have had any tourism. If you go camping if you go camping after work today, you are not likely hitching up your horse and wagon and going out to the campground. You're jumping in your car and you're going camping. You don't think about that whole process, but it exists because the car exists. Retail changed. Now people could go anywhere. Logistics changed and suburbs changed. Now we didn't have to live crowded, tucked in the middle of a city like Paris or London. We could move outward of the city. Now that's turned into some places a bit of a challenge. I live in a city with about 1.2 million people. Great road work here. I can get just about anywhere in the city in 30 minutes. But if you lived in Toronto, you might be commuting 2 hours to your job every day. So it has its downsides, but we could not have had the traditional suburb in any city. When I was in France last week, I stayed in an Airbnb in a suburb that was about 40 minutes from downtown Paris by train, shorter if I took an Uber, but I had that option, right? I had that option because of what we've done. So what changed in our work life is everything changed. Ford, because he believed you wanted to get the best workers. Now, before anybody says it, Ford was anti-Semitic. He was a creature of his time. There is no doubt. We can talk about this in a historical context, but I want to point out that I have a textbook from 1909 from a country that was not Germany. And the textbook, if you read it, it was a math textbook, and it said, a person who is, this is the textbook for grade 9. If a person is handicapped, it costs the state X. If they're not handicapped, it costs less than X. How many people would we have to terminate with handicaps to save the state money? That was a grade 9 math problem. So, and the same question of Jews, etc. So the world was anti-Semitic. Ford fit into that. However, he was not racist. He raised the daily income. So the daily income for a 9-hour day was $2.34 in 1914. He doubled that to $5 because he believed his workers he would get better workers if he paid them more. They went from 9 hours a day to 8 hours a day and 1 day off a week. So they would not work 7 days, but work 6 so that they would have time to be with their families. Next to China and its 300 million people moving because of their industrial revolution It was the largest single land migration of people ever was in the 1920s when it was Southern people moving to the north in the United States because Henry Ford was an equal opportunity employer. He didn't care if you were black. He didn't care if you were white. He didn't care if you were what we call Mexican. He didn't care. He just wanted good workers. So there's this giant sucking sound from the southern United States to the northern United States as workers move from sharecropping in the south to $5 a day and almost guaranteed income, a guaranteed job in the north part of the United States. And so Ford's idea was we have to make everybody into a consumer. Everybody had to become a consumer, and the only way they can do that is if they earned a fair salary, if they were earning a salary. Without getting into all of the details, it was things like, think about it this way. If with at least, I don't know about the European context, but in the Canadian context, I don't know where I would have taken my girlfriends to neck if I didn't have an automobile. Right? Because I wasn't going to do it at home. I wasn't going to do it in her house. So we got in the car, drove 50 kilometers out into the countryside, parked at a nice overview, and then never noticed the overview again, right? Never paid attention to that ever again. So the automobile changed everything so Mexico came to the automobile late, and my wife is from Mexico. So when we were dating in the late sort of 1999, 1998, in small villages, it was still, cars were not common. And so you would go to the central courtyard and walk in circles with your girlfriend, with your mom following 3 steps behind to chaperone. I'll take my 73 Chev car any day over that model. All right, I'll take that any day. Rural properties were no longer isolated. They could get mail service. They could get doctor's services. They could get stores they had never had before, supermarkets, etc. And ultimately, Ford drives, not on purpose, but he drives the unionization model. Until the United Auto Workers was established in 1934. It is the first mass industry union that we are so comfortable with now. The idea that we have unions is comfortable. My argument would be thank Henry Ford, because if not, we'd all be working in factories without unions, and before that, we'd be working in our homes making shirts. So Henry Ford, sometimes on purpose, sometimes by accident, completely reestablished how economies work, how they were designed, and how they were built. So I argue that artificial intelligence is that third one. Amazingly enough, about 100 years after the automobile, automobile takes off in 1920. We're in 1920 or 2026, sorry. But really, artificial intelligence goes back to 2002. It's first introduced as a concept in 2002, becomes viable in 2016, and becomes generally available to all of us, which is much like if you think about how the internet worked, it was the same thing. We have the internet today, and we all use it. We're using it today. Until about 1985, it was designed for universities, governments, and military to talk to each other after a nuclear war. The idea was that we could continue to communicate between the 3 major pillars after a nuclear war. Berlin Wall falls. Everybody goes, okay, the idea of a worldwide war is probably over. What are we going to do with this infrastructure we have? And they opened it to the public. And the public grabbed it. I was head of a chamber of commerce, and I was asked to debate in 1999. So what, 25 years ago, 26 years ago, I was asked to debate on the side that we should use the internet for business. The other side was business should not have access to the internet. That was 26 years ago. It changed completely how we think, because is there anybody... When I was at that conference in France, I lost my internet for a day, not even a day, 6 hours or so. And I had no idea how much I depended on it until I didn't have it. everything I touched wouldn't work because it needed the internet. But very few of us are arguing we still argue we should temper it somehow, we should control it somehow. Sorry, I'm not following my own slides here, sorry. I'll make these available to Louise if people want these, they can have them, though they're just an update to what I'm saying. So no one is arguing we should put the internet back in a bottle, take it away, not use it. Let's go back to not being able to communicate this way. I noticed there's people here from Africa, from Europe, from North America. It's an audience I could not speak to. Louisa, you could not afford to fly. And I don't mean that I'm expensive, but you couldn't afford to fly every speaker to Europe. You couldn't wait for all of these folks to buy a ticket to Europe to come and hear my 45-minute presentation. This works because we have the internet. Artificial intelligence will be the same way. The challenge is there's always a pushback against new technology. In England and the United States and Canada, we had what were called red flag laws when the automobile was introduced. People were so worried the automobile was going to terrify the horses that if you owned an automobile, you had to have a person walk in front of the automobile, 50 meters in front of the automobile, carrying a red flag saying that there's a car coming, be careful. And the speed limit was 6 kilometers an hour outside of cities, 4 kilometers inside of cities. That was the speed limit for automobiles. And it wasn't to make it safer. It was to protect the horse industry. And Henry Ford just steamrolled all of that. Those laws disappeared very quickly because it just didn't make sense. We were using the technology in new ways. So what can we do now in today's world? We can do knowledge work much faster. Now, when Henry Ford introduced the car in mass production, there was belief that this was going to drive the buggy manufacturers out of business. It was going to drive the whip manufacturers out of the business. The harness businesses would go out of business. Absolutely true. To be replaced by hotels and motels and gas stations and roadside restaurants and all of the other industries we moved to support the automobile. There will be disruption. I make a case regularly to my students that AI will not take your job. Someone using AI better than you will take your job. If you don't get a hold of this technology, you will become as dated as somebody who still wants to make horse buggies. It's just not going to work. And so decision-making becomes much faster. The AI can, in its infancy, because we're still in its infancy, we're at the same place a Ford Model T was in 1914. Wasn't a great car today, but it was a great car at its time. AI is going to continue to develop, will continue to grow. It will encourage better knowledge, so we'll be able to reach out to better sources of information. Think about the trillions of points of information that are available on the internet. We've accessed those through Google, right? Google, do a Google search, and it would come back with half a dozen choices, the most read, which didn't necessarily mean it was true. It was the most read. Now I can search for a presentation like this. I can say, give me some background on the Industrial Revolution, but only from articles written by PhDs at recognized universities. And it sorts that out, so I'm getting good information, not the information from somebody who's in his basement wearing a tinfoil hat. I am able to look at things in a different way. We're making the decisions faster. Even when I was in Europe last week, the train shut down. We couldn't move. We were stuck at a local station, and one guy from Sweden, one guy from London, and one guy from Canada, no idea the French train network. We went on AI and we said, we're stuck in this train station, want to get home by the most expedient and cost-effective method. What do you suggest? And it came back and actually gave us the number of a local competitor to Uber that would get us there cheaper. There is no way I would have known that even existed without using AI to find that with the right set of promises. It will also take out The guys that in North America, anyway, we said there was a euphemism that said, if you lose your job, go learn to code computers because coding computers is going to be the job of the future. Yeah, it's not. AI will replace those jobs. Controlling it, writing better software will still be a human function, but the hard rows of ones and zeros is going to be done by somebody else. Healthcare, we're already seeing improvement in that. Think about if you're traveling. So I was in Paris. I might have got something that was very local to France, right? It was a disease that the French doctors see every single day. They know if you treat it in a certain way, it's going to go away very quickly. Same with Africa, same with Asia, same with Latin America. My doctor in Canada will never have seen that disease ever, right? He will not have seen that disease because he's in Canada, not in Mexico. So he types in the symptoms. AI goes out and searches, does a question, where have you been traveling? What areas of Mexico have you been traveling? And then it comes back saying, this is probably what you have. Test for these things. And then if it's true, treat with this medicine. All done in less time than it takes to talk about it. Because my doctor can now isolate what I brought back from Mexico with me and treat it appropriately, not testing different methods of proving something he doesn't know. Marketing, this is the one time I'll do this, Louise. I've written a book on marketing and AI. That's it. No more sales pitch for the book. But marketing still needs the human touch. We can build products, we can build campaigns, we can reach out to individuals. But at the end of the day, I need to convince Louise that she can trust me as a company and buy my product. An ad will not do that. So we're not going to get rid of people in marketing. They're going to do different functions. I no longer calculate, which I used to do, calculate how do I reach out to the best customer at the right time in the right evening of the week? How do I reach them? I type that question into Google and say, I want to reach people in Luxembourg that are in the high-tech industry. What's the best time to reach them and what's the best message that's likely to move them? It gives me that. I still have to talk to them when they call, right? There's still that marketing feel. Manufacturing is going to change. And I spend a lot of my time, though I'm a sessional lecturer, I spend a lot of my time in education, and it's all changed because when I started teaching, and I won't tell you how long ago that was, but I will tell you horses were gone when I started teaching. They were gone by then. So I had to, if I had a question in class I didn't know, I had to tell the students, I will get back to you next week for our class and I'll answer that question for you. And I had to dig through textbooks and I had to go to the library to get that answer for students. We can answer that question in the classroom with them. Okay, good question. Let's explore that together. I'll type into the AI, whichever one I'm using, I will type into AI that question and let's see what it tells us. Let's learn. So learning becomes a discussion, not there's a I unfortunately can't load it up, but I have a Doonesbury cartoon. Doonesbury was very popular here. And the professor is speaking to the class. He's at a podium. He's looking out, and all of the heads are down writing notes. Scribble, 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 scribble. He sees the top of people's heads, and he says, the sky is green. Scribble, 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 scribble. Black is white. Scribble, 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 scribble. God is dead. Scribble, 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 scribble. He pounds his head on the podium and goes, the art of teaching is dead. At which point, one of the students looks up and goes, this is a really interesting class. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. Those days when the professor, and I saw one yesterday, I was frustrated. I saw a professor do a presentation which was effective in about 1982, but was a terrible presentation to an articulate, knowledgeable audience. And my recognition is I have to do that, and I have to pay attention that, and I won't pick on any of the participants, but Louise, if I say something in the class, you are fact checking me in class. If you don't believe, you are fact checking me in class. And so I need to come better prepared and all the rest. AI will not replace everything any more than the automobile replaced transportation. We still get on airplanes and fly places. We do things. But the reality is AI will be one of those fundamental technologies that changes everything. You can fight against it. You can fight against the car by putting in red flag laws. The term Luddites, a Luddite is somebody who doesn't like technology. They're from the Industrial Revolution. These were gangs that would go around to factories and smash and burn the factories to go back to a cottage industry. You can do that. I'm just warning you, it's going to be a waste of whatever time you spend on it. AI is here. Now you need to get ahead of it and figure out how do you use it and how do we control it. So I'll conclude, because I want to leave a little bit of time for questions. I'll conclude with this. The Industrial Revolution automated muscle power. The automobile automated mobility. And artificial intelligence is automating cognition. History will not be exactly the same, but we need to learn from it. There you go. Thank you, folks. There's my presentation for today.
Norman, thank you so, so much. I had a wonderful time. I had a wonderful time. Thank you so, so much. What a fantastic gift to have you here today. I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed it. Helen's got a hand up. Go on, Helen. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're not familiar with Helen, Helen is chairperson of the board at EBU, fantastically influential. And I would say Helen, first time I met Helen, it was like being hit by a train. She's got so much energy. I love Helen to bits. So if you haven't met Helen today, Helen Talisa, please let me give you the floor.
And I want to tell you, Helen is very modest. I know her and she's very modest. I had no idea she was the chair of the board. I'll be nicer to you going forward, Helen, I promise.
Good morning, or good afternoon to those at the other end of the world. Helen is my name for those who our paths haven't crossed. And firstly, it's been an honor. In my other life, Norman is my president of the Strathcona Rotary Club. So with that, thank you very much, Mr. President. It's not every day that you ask your president to please come and give a presentation, a high-level presentation pro bono. But thank you very, very much, Norman, for accepting our request. I just jumped in a little late. I was also in another meeting, and in this meeting, again, the conversation was AI. And as Norman says, AI is going nowhere. AI is now, no matter how much of a great innovator you are, but if you don't have AI, which is a needle that moves innovation, you're not going anywhere. And with that, it cuts across all sectors. We can debate it, love it or hate it. AI is here. I mean, very blunt and very candid. Perhaps, Louise, this is a thought. Given that maybe this was a Friday afternoon when most of our students are on the other end of the world, this could have impacted the attendance. What I will suggest that can this please, the recording be shared, not just only virtually, insist that as part of their learning, because this was exam week. So where the lecturers could include it onto the classroom platforms to appreciate this. Because, I mean, Norman, I'm just saying this because we have been deliberate as EBU that most of our programs are going to be on the backbone of tech, AI programs, blockchain, robotics, coding. There's I tried to make an attempt to learn that. After 2-3 minutes of classroom, I thought, no, I give up. I don't think this is for me. But, I find myself having to go back to that and these are skills that we need to be alive to. These are skills and at least we have to appreciate as leaders, as managers, and even as workers. You don't have to be a developer to know what AI is or to appreciate or even to advocate for AI. But with that said, it was just to thank you, my president, Norman Leach, and I'll open the floor up for those in attendance. And I encourage you, please do ask Norman questions. This is your moment. I mean, the next time you'll see Norman on the floor is where you're paying $1,000 a ticket to hear him speak. So please,
Helen, from your mouth to God's ears. That's
there you go. There you go. So please, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Helen. Thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
I just wanted to chip in on a personal note there and say, yes, Helen, I fully agree with you. This is something that I would like to integrate into to a number of the courses that are running at the moment, because I was so glad, Norman, that you touched on the on Henry Ford and all of those elements and talking about economies of scale and so on, because I've been following an economics program here at EBU, and we talked about all of these things, and to have them once again, just to bring the context to that is very important. So I hope that everyone else here present, who was also in my economics class last year, had a little thought for our Professor Nick, who talked to us about economies of scale too.
And I'm just,
Ladies
and
and
I just,
gentlemen, would you like go on? Yes. Who was that?
I know I
So
jumped on top of somebody. Sorry, somebody else can go. Sorry.
was somebody about to ask a question? If so, please do. I can't see.
And so let me jump in until that person sort of gets their courage up again. Sorry for cutting you off. The mistake we make is judging history by modern terms. So Henry Ford had his foibles, but it doesn't change how the world evolved because of his invention. Everybody that we had this conversation, Helen, I was talking to somebody last night, and we said we're just terrified of how we're going to be judged in 50 years when the morals have changed again. We saw this. My grandmother smoked. My grandfather smoked. We had our daughter. Our youngest daughter was about 8 years old, and we were in Las Vegas. And a man was walking down the street with a lit cigarette, and she pulled on my coat and said, "Dad, that guy's smoking." And I said, "Yes, he is." And she said, "Don't we have to call the police or something?" And it's how our vision of simple things like smoking a cigarette have changed over time. So yeah, Henry Ford was a product of his time, and we have to judge him in that way, not in a modern sense.
Absolutely, that's true. I have just noticed, I apologize, I did not notice before, that Dr. Mully, our academic dean, is here.
Oh,
Uh,
yes.
Dr. Mully, would you like to just jump in and say a few words? We'd be delighted to hear from you if you can, if you can.
Just a very quick hello. I'm in the middle of another meeting, but thank
Oh,
you so much, Norman. Lovely to see you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
And Helen, thank you.
I'm so glad that he was here to see. Okay, great. Well, I don't have any questions in the chat here. Norman, would you kindly tell us a little bit about your book, please? Because it is something I would like to share again, because this, oh, hold on a second. We've got a question here.
Okay.
From Techno B8. I intend to do a PhD thesis on the impact of generative AI. Sorry, I need to expand my screen. Can you see this in the chat, guys?
Yeah.
Yes, you can. Great. Generative AI in learning in universities, but my lecturer is not comfortable with that. She feels I should concentrate on the positive aspects of AI and that the study is not worth it. What would you advise?
Nothing should be taken in its entirety. If you'd like, I can do a speech of a lot of the things that Henry Ford made mistakes on. It's in the totality that one of these generational technologies survives. Was there disruption, etc., in the Industrial Revolution? We would be silly to deny it. We would be silly to deny that there were issues. There are also good things. The balance that we have to take, whether you're writing a PhD thesis or this, what I just did for you, it's to take the preponderance of the evidence and come out with an even calculation of how it worked. So I would no more want you to write a completely anti-negative side of AI than I would want you to write a completely positive, right? Pitch to your advisor that it's about the balance. It's about coming to a conclusion, not just the positive stuff, but also what are going to be the impacts and how is society going to handle those. I've found that PhD advisors are typically, you can negotiate with them typically, but there's my best advice.
Sound advice as well, I think. Techno, I hope that's yes, thank you, says Techno. Great. Yeah. Super. Can you tell us, because I was very, very interested in the idea of AI in marketing. Marketing is not something that I studied here at EBU, but I'm sure that amongst us today, we do have some students who are on one of our marketing programs. can you give us a little bit of an insight into what's in your book? Eunice, yes, Eunice, is that you? Yes.
So,
Would you like to give us a little kind of,
yeah.
overview or some kind of insight into that?
So while horses were gone, when I got into marketing, etc., the blue line was not. I learned on the blue line, and the blue line was cutting and pasting documents, then running them through a printer so that you could produce a brochure or something. So you were limited to your artistic ability and the sharpness of your X-Acto knife. For anybody who has has done blue lines. So I go that far back. That in that world, Louise, you could not make anything personalized. You run a newspaper ad and just hope that the shotgun hit somebody and that they would pick up the phone and call you. Today, and what the textbook is about is that consumers don't want to be sold as a demographic. They don't want to be sold as a group. They want to be individual. So if I can use you as an example, Louise, you buy things. I don't know what you buy, but I can through AI find out what you buy, when you buy it, how you buy it, and then use AI to get the right ad in front of you at the right time. But that cannot be mechanical. It cannot appear to be mechanical. So what we do is we use AI to do the heavy lifting, and then a human being becomes involved. And so this is where the book is about how to use AI to do the heavy lifting, the stuff that was labor intensive, hard to do, depended on very specific skills. It can do that. What it cannot do is connect the way Helen and I just did by saying, we go to the same Rotary Club, so you can trust me. You go to the same club, you can trust me. That part of marketing has to remain. And so it's about how do we make things highly effective, but also highly personalized. And those are two opposite ends of the spectrum. We could use the machine tool, AI, and I could produce hot darn marketing campaigns that will not connect. I can do connected ones, but if I have to write every single ad to be out to Louise or to Helen as an individual, which means I'm doing thousands of individualized ads, I'm done. I can't do the work. So the book is about how you find that happy place in the middle. How do you find that happy place where you use the tools? And look, I know there's people who want to say AI is terrible. Are you saying that about the laptop you're carrying? Because in 1985, no one had seen laptops, right? But we don't say today they're an evil tool. We don't tell you not to use spell check. It's just a form of AI, low grade, low intelligence, but it is AI, that it is looking for mistakes the human being made and then changing them, fixing them. But just like in that low grade AI, when it gives me a spelling suggestion, I have to agree to the change. It doesn't just automatically do it for me. Because in Canada, we use British spellings, not American spellings. But of course, Google and Outlook and all of those are all American products that keep giving me American spellings. So we have to change that. So that's what it's about, Louise, in a nutshell, is marketing at speed while keeping it personalized.
I'd love to get a link to that so I can share it with everyone. So if they would like to take a look at it. Yeah.
The book is going to the publisher probably by Sunday. It won't be available till September, but I'll be happy to let you know when it's out.
Wonderful. So we're getting like an avant-premiere here. This is great.
Yeah, if you're a writer today, you have to sell your own book. So I purposely didn't do that in the presentation. Somebody can drop off now if they're tired of the sales pitch.
Bushra has raised her hand. Hi there, Bushra. How are you?
Yes, I'm good. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I have a simple question about universities. How can universities better prepare students for an AI-driven workforce?
Train them on it. Teach them. I teach at a couple business schools as a sessional lecturer, and it frustrates the heck out of me. Is the dean still with us? Louise, or is he gone?
As in
Yes.
James, is James around?
Yes, I am
Yes.
still
There you go.
here. I am
Dr.
still here.
James, I'm always respectful for deans, mostly because you guys sign my paycheck. So I'm always respectful, but we have to stop saying no AI in the classroom.
Absolutely.
I hit that. There's a couple Canadian universities I teach for, and don't take this the wrong way. That's their opinion, and I completely ignore it. Because if I'm graduating a business student and they come to work for me in my consulting firm, I don't expect to have to teach them how to use AI. Not today, not anymore. They should come with that at least base skills and knowledge to use AI. So first is accept it in the classroom, but control it. Teach people how to use it. Teach them what are good practices and what are bad practices. We do it for plagiarism. Why can't we do it for AI? So that's the first step. The second step is to get, and this sounds self-aggrandizing, I'm not, but it's to get instructors who accept that it's going to happen. You don't have, just like our question about the PhD thesis, I don't agree it's perfect. I'm not out here proselytizing and saying you got to get AI at all costs, use AI. It's use it where it's a tool. If I'm if I'm going shopping in the shopping center, I know that I have to leave my car in the parking lot. I can't drive it down the halls of the mall. So every technology has its place and its use. It's our job as instructors and universities to teach students how to do that. How do you do that to be all of the the cases I read about where AI was used to defraud or to do something, everything they did was against the law anyway. They just used AI to do it. It wasn't AI's fault. Helen, I think you'd agree. If we want to stop bank robbers, there's a way to stop bank robberies. 100% we can stop bank robberies. Shut down all the banks. Because then there'll be no bank robberies. However, we can't do that. So now we have to find out how to run a banking system that accepts there's a risk of bank robberies and find unique ways to do that. I think it's exactly the same with AI. There will be people who misuse it, and we have to put fences around those people, not the technology.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for that question, Bushra. It's so, so important. I just want to interject on something, and I want to go back to a conversation. And I remember this from it was about 10 or 15 years ago when I was teaching English and with a student. And the student was a guy, and he had a son who was at high school. And so I'm going back 10-ish years. And his son, who must have been 14, 15, had a mobile phone and was taking the phone to school with him. And they were having a debate in France about how we cannot have mobile phones in the classroom. And the guy I was talking to, he was the father of this boy, said, and I thought it was really interesting because it was the first person who said this to me, said, I can't understand why they would stop children from using the phones. He said, because today we have to accept that this is an extension of their arm. And whilst I'm not necessarily saying it's a good thing, but it's a reality. And very much in the same way that AI is now an integral part of real life, everyday life, business life, we have to accept it and we have to work with it, not work against it, and be on the ball with it.
And in the case of cell phones, when I look out into I allow cell phones in my classroom. When I used to look out when they had these bans, you can't have a cell phone in a university classroom. I'd look out and 20 of 25 people were looking in their lap because they had the phone in their lap and they were writing and texting, pretending that they weren't. And of course, all I saw was 20 people looking at their lap. So we have to move on. We have to accept it. Universities today build parking lots because of Henry Ford, right? So we need to look at how does our universities change? And this is going to change to this, where I can lecture from Edmonton. I can do a presentation from Edmonton and not lose a step, right? And it changes the dynamic because I'm working from home today. And during this presentation, 2 dogs wandered into the room, laid down at my feet, and are rubbing their heads against my leg. Because we can. Why do I have to be in a classroom if we can make this work? I think the future, though, is hybrid. It's going to be doing some in person, some online, and we're going to figure it out because everybody learns differently. I'm a kinetic learner. I want to learn by doing. There's visual learners, there's audio learners. We have to find a way to address them all. And that's on the universities and ultimately the instructors to find out how to do that. And as I say, I heard a presentation yesterday that would have been suitable for a 1982 classroom. And I'm not sure, other than tenure, how that person continues to exist at his university in this modern world.
It's interesting you said that because there's a comment here from Maria in the chat, and she said, going back to that conversation earlier, I think that before this we need teachers to be trained in AI because it's a big problem if our teaching staff and our educators are not up to speed with AI and the possibilities and so on, and that integration in the classroom, of course. Everybody has to be on board.
And many of us, I hope I'm not one, but many of us are stuck on ChatGTP. I'm using AI because I'm making it write me an email. That's not the strength. That's the car with a red flag walking in front of it.
That's very true. I may still be one of those. I've got a question here from James. Right, this has got multiple parts to it. In the short term, what does AI mean for education and work? I think we've probably addressed that one. What exactly does cognitive automation mean? Is a question from James. Cognitive automation.
We're now automating thinking. We used to when we sat in front of Word, we still had to type the email. We had to type it ourselves. Or if we did a report for school, we had to type it ourselves. The machines are now helping us with the brute force thinking. I mean, where does the word, sorry, James, but the word computer comes from the fact that we used to have a job title called computer. And the computer was a person, often in accounting, and you would have 50, 60, 70 people sitting working with a pencil and ledgers trying to figure out complex math problems. We got a big giant machine from IBM, and that we started to run those things through, and the machine absorbed the name computer because it replaced all of those people in a room. Those people just simply weren't doing that job anymore. They were still accountants. They went on to do other things. So we're going to have to accept that this is what it is. Now we figure out the solutions. And I think anybody who talks about it has their own. I have my own, but that doesn't mean they're right. We will learn as we go along how that all works. Does that answer the question? I'm sorry, I got caught up in my own rhetoric there.
James, let us know with the thumbs up if that's the answer that you will have looking for. Okay, great, perfect. Apart from James, I don't see any other questions coming up, and we're just over an hour, so I'm going to let everybody slowly go. Thank you, everybody, for completing the attendance poll. Thank you for your participation. Listen, everyone, just a quick word to our students. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. I know that Friday afternoons may not always be the time that you want to sit down and start working again, but it's a time of the week when I know that not everyone is in the class and so on. So thank you. James is giving us thumbs up. Yes, thank you, James.
And there's my personal email in the chat. So if people want to continue the conversation, that's my personal email.
Fabulous. I will also follow up to everyone. The session was recorded. I'm going to share it with our instructors. I'm going to share it with everybody. And I'm also going to include your LinkedIn and the slides. If you wouldn't mind sharing your slides with us, that would be great. And if there are any links that we can have, to follow your work and the future publications, we'd love to have those as well. I'd love to be able to share those.
I don't think there's another Norman Leach in the same way on LinkedIn, but
okay.
I'm going to give you LinkedIn's a great way to connect with me. It's Norman Leach, the Chaos Navigator on LinkedIn. So that's the one you're looking for. And I'm an open networker, so I'll accept everybody who asks. I'll accept anybody into my following if you ask. No questions from my part. You just are part of the group.
Fabulous. That's great to know. So everybody, please go and give him a follow because I've had a little tour around his LinkedIn and around some of his work, and there's some really, really great stuff. So please do keep up with him. Norma, thank you so much for giving up your Friday morning to be with us.
No, that's
It's been
good.
lovely. It really, really, very, very enjoyable. Touched on some very important subjects for a lot of our students, which will be relevant to a lot of people here. So that was really, really great. Thank you so very much for
Thank you
being
to
part of the
everybody. Thank you.
conversation. And I hope that we can stay in touch. I'd love to have you contributing to something another time if we could, you know,
Absolutely.
dare to ask to you to contribute one more time. So thank you so much.
Perfect.
Absolute
Thank
pleasure.
you.
I've got one
Thank
final
you.
request. I've got one final request. Would
Yep.
everybody mind, everybody in the classroom who's in the meeting right now, would you all mind just switching on your cameras for 1 second so I can do a little screenshot of everybody and just say, just to show us everybody what a fantastic session we had today. Thank you so much, everybody. Hold on, I have to figure out how to participants. Here we go. How can I make sure I can see you all? Not like that. Oh, I can't do it. Never mind. Never mind.
You
Sorry,
probably have
everybody.
to go. Let me try, Louise. You have to go to the gallery, I think, and then let me
I know I
try
can't find my
invite in.
gallery. I found it. I
Okay,
found
give
it.
me
I
a
found it. I
second,
found it.
everybody.
That's it. I've got it. I found it. I found it. Okay.
Okay, great. You found it. Okay.
I've got a lot of people. Maybe not everybody. Okay. Everybody. 3, 2, 1. Smile. That's one. And I've got a second page, so I'm going to do a second page. Everybody who's on page 2. You don't know if you're page 2 or page 1. Page 2. Naomi, Techno, Rebecca, Kenneth, Maria. Okay, you're on page 2. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Give us a smile. Yay! Fantastic. I'll have, if you don't mind, everybody, I'm going to show you all on LinkedIn later.
Perfect.
Thank you, everybody, for making this a successful,
Thank you, everybody.
afternoon. It was hugely enjoyable. Big round of applause for Norman, everybody. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. It was fascinating. Thank you so, so much.
Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Lovely. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your weekend, everyone. Thank you so much for being here.